annual goals. The main thing here.
Actually, Stephanie just asked a question, Rod. How does everyone find balance between homeschooling, life, work, farm, school, etc.? I think that's been my biggest concern in trying to find balance. Any thoughts?
I think balance is the hardest we call it work-life balance at my workplace. So I think what I would suggest, this is one of the reasons that I said write down your positive reasons for homeschooling, because everything gets hard sometimes. And it seems to me that the best things that you ought to be doing most are sometimes ones that get hard and really hard. So I think write down your positive reasons for homeschooling and stay on track that way. Would anybody else like to answer that?
Hi, this is Anne from Shaunavon. I've been homeschooling for probably 15 years. Can you hear me, Rod?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I think it's good. I don't want to minimize that it's going to be really easy or anything. It is very time consuming. Being a parent is time consuming, and this is like extreme parenting is the way I always think of it. And I think for me, the most important thing was to let go of the stuff that isn't important and to focus on the stuff that is important. And whether that's in your school time or whether that's in your extracurricular time, or, you know, it just becomes really important to focus on the school that's making a difference and let go of the stuff that isn't making a difference. I think that would be my piece of advice on that.
Yeah.
It's Jill here, and I would add in quickly in regards to farm/ranch life. We take time in the fall when there's harvest time, and we let the kids are involved in that. And in the spring, they're also involved with the seeding. We take a break from book learning and we do outside of the classroom learning. You have that freedom and you have that ability to do that when you're homeschooling.
This is Lori here from Near Moose Jaw. I would just say have grace for yourself as well. This is going to be a huge learning curve for you and your child as you get going at this. And I've been recommending that people just start with math and language first for the first couple weeks, get into a routine, get to know your kid's learning style, that kind of thing. And then you can start building and add your social studies, you know, a few times a week, or your science, do some science experiments, but don't try to just jump into everything. That I don't want you to feel like you're failing the first, 3 weeks in. Just have grace with yourself. It's a steep learning curve. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have off days, and your kids are going to have off days, but you're going to get there. So just have a lot of grace with yourself as you get going.
Hey everyone, this is Krista here. I'm a representative from Yorkton area. I just wanted to add, as soon as you can, foster independence in your children. Try to get them to be doing things for themselves, to know what they need to get done every day. I know if you have young kids, that's a lot harder, but as they get older, you will really, really enjoy that feature, because that will give you a little more time to yourself, time to prep supper, time to do things during the school hours while the kids are busy getting their stuff done. I use a checklist for my kids. It has everything on there every day, what I expect them to get done, and that has been a lifesaver for me. I've been homeschooling for 8 years. Also find support. So whether that's a Facebook group or just a fellow family that's in the same boat as you are, just taking their kids out for a year, or a seasoned homeschooler, that is going to do wonders for you when those days are hard. And you need to know yourself. I am an introvert, and so I need time to myself. And I take 3 or 4 weekends a year and I go somewhere by myself. Sometimes it's just to a friend's house when they're away. I just need silence to think and to just regroup. So know that about yourself. And if you need that time, that's okay. It's okay to need some time away from your kids every once in a while. And some of you are probably already feeling that, being with your children more often than you're used to. And I think all the other tips that have been given too are very important as well.
Okay, I have another question. When you start, can we get help from other parents? So that's actually a pretty broad question. And in one sense, the answer is yes. And in another sense, the answer is be careful. So nothing about parent-directed home-based education means that you cannot enroll your children in online learning classes, that you can't join co-ops, that you can't hire tutors. The item is you, the parent, need to set the learning objectives and be actively involved in the education of your child. There's been a lot of discussion about homeschool pods, where potentially one parent teaches the children from many other families with minimal involvement from parents. I don't think that's home-based education. I think the ministry would have grave concerns about that because you are delegating your child's education to what is essentially an unregistered private school. So just be careful. That's what I'm saying. Be diligent in staying actively involved with your children's education, plan it, set the learning objectives, and realize that home-based education really is parent-directed education.
All right, the next question, Rod, is from Roanna, and my question is the SHBE membership, what does it include?
So SHBE is a membership-based organization. We are 100% volunteer. When you buy a membership, you are adding your voice to say that parent choice, the parent part of that three bubble thing, and the child part of that three bubble thing is not to be discounted in favor of the government part of that three bubble thing that I presented at the very beginning, between the civil government, parents, and children. That's, to me, as someone who deals with the province and the Ministry of Education regularly, that's top of my mind. In addition to that, there's we do publish a journal. It is intermittent throughout the year. We have a parents Facebook page. We have templates that you can fill out that help formalize the written education plan. And the goal of the SHBE templates is to ensure that you're not providing too much information. So we want to meet the minimum regulatory requirements, but we really don't want to provide information that boxes you in. Accountability is great, and I don't want to skirt accountability or meeting the policy manual. But school division administrators, they like to know details that you don't need to share with them. So those templates take a lot of time to develop. We'll be putting them out. They are out. I would like to make them a fillable form, and then we put on a yearly and annual convention in February. We did get it in before COVID-19, and we are planning one again for this year. It'll be in Regina at Queensbury. Lord willing, we'll actually get to meet each other. So that's probably a pretty short answer, but.
All right, the next, sorry, go ahead, Rod.
You go ahead.
The next question is, how about homeschooling for more than 2 kids with a baby?
That's up for grabs. We've homeschooled. My wife homeschooled 10 children, and guaranteed there's times when there's a baby involved. She put them in slings, took them with them. You know, I'll tell you this. This is something that the Ministry of Education has a hard time imagining. But when we're having a family discussion, it looks a lot more like a family discussion than it looks like talking about the 17th century. And the young ones get what they get, and the babies don't get a lot, but they're there and they're happy because they're with their family. They can be a distraction. People have used something called busy bags. They're just little handheld toys that they can play with at the table quietly. I'll let others chime in on it though.
This is Jill again with Zone 6. One of the things that we have done is like Krista said earlier, you need to early on establish with your kids an ability to work independently from you for short periods of time. That's a lifesaver, because then you can hold the baby, you can feed the baby, whatever needs to happen there, and the other children are still carrying on with their schoolwork because they know what they need to do.
All right, so from Roanna Gordon, for the seasoned homeschoolers, how much prep time do you set aside to plan? Now, go ahead. So you sound like you're going to say something, Rod.
So obviously there's more parent input in the younger years. By the time our kids were somewhere around grade 9, they were doing a lot of the planning. My daughter tells a story about one year that she, we chose a math curriculum for her that didn't really do it for her. She came to my wife and she said, I don't like this. Joe found a different method that worked a little bit better, and then we found a different one, and that's the one that she completed her year with. For the younger ones, Joe, my wife, spends a lot more prep time at the beginning of the year. And then we do a basket time in the morning. And so she'll put that together one week. And then each morning we do a routine that includes some read aloud together, some basic things that we want everybody to learn. And then they go off and they do their independent work, or she teaches directly with them. Not really an answer, but if somebody else wants to chime in to help me out on that, that'd be great. So I think the answer, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I'll just pop in here. This is Lori again. When I first started homeschooling about 10 years ago, I thought there was a lot of prep involved. And I thought you'd have to like prep your week or prep your day beforehand. And I guess it just really depends on the curriculum that you choose, or you know, which unit studies or what kind of approach you're going to take. But learning your teaching style is just as important as learning your kids' learning styles. And I know that I don't have a lot of prep time that I can do, so I choose curriculum that doesn't require that. I'm learning alongside our kids, whether that be history or science or math or whatever. I choose curriculum. I choose to do things that don't require me to have 2 hours on a Sunday night trying to get ready for the week. So, but I know that there's a lot of curriculum out there that does require more prep, but it's not really like a teacher preparing to teach 30 students all at the same time and trying to get their science experiments together and things like that. Those kinds of things can be done on the fly when you're with your kids. So yeah, kind of a short answer. It's not like prepping for a whole classroom. So I hope that helps.
All right, so let's bounce over to the next question. Carrie actually asked 2 questions, and I'm going to put them both into one. I know you guys have been asking a lot of questions, and we're very grateful. First question Carrie asked is, are there technology aids for those who don't have adequate technology? Starting will be expensive. What is the current reimbursement, and what would that be increased on a need-to-need? Would that be increased on a need-to-need basis? And her second question is there a way for, because to be honest, I had expected women to be speaking, but I'm pleasantly surprised to hear some men on here. To that effect, my question is there a way for men from new homeschooling situations to learn from dads who have been involved already?
So I'll answer the technology aids and getting started on that current and reimbursement angle. So many school divisions do offer some rates for things like, no, I just drew a blank, mathletics and different subscriptions that they use in the classroom. They do require you to pay an amount for that, but it's reduced. It really varies by the school division, and so does reimbursement. So conceptually, the province provides funding to the school division. The province does not require the school division to provide any funding to the parents. Some school divisions choose to pass that along, some of it along, some do not. So it really depends on your school division. There are nonprofit groups out there. SaskTel Pioneers did have, and you'll have to look at this yourself, but they do have a program, Computers for Kids, that you may be able to get a refurbished computer. That's the kind of thing that I would look at to decrease your expenses. You don't want to be spending, $700 for a new laptop or $1,000 for an iPad or, these kinds of things. And the school is not going to provide that to you. For the dad's question, so in Regina, we try and do a dad's breakfast once a month. That need really needs to be filled on a local level, and so there's local support groups. My suggestion would be to connect locally. If you look on the SHBE website, there's zone reps for each corner of the province. If you want to reach out to one of the SHBE zone reps, they will know roughly who to contact, that you can get involved with a local support group and connect with some of the dads there. If you're in Regina, I'm happy to meet with you. Whatever your level you're comfortable with, I'm comfortable with.
Alrighty, next question from Shanna. Is there somewhere where experienced homeschoolers share what curriculum they have used with each grade and subject?
So there are some Facebook groups that might be useful to there. There's local groups. There's one in Moose Jaw. There's one in there's Suddenly Homeschooling is a great resource. Monique Wilms, a great homeschool mom from Estevan area. When this first hit, she and I discussed it, and she had started that group, helping parents with questions just like this, mostly through the sudden shutdown, but I really think that that's a good resource. There's iHomeschool in Saskatchewan. One thing that I would caution regarding social media is that there are a lot of experts who have never read the policy manual. And I just don't keep up on social media. So these are unofficial sources of information. I wouldn't ask them policy questions on those Facebook groups, but for curriculum, for what works for you, I think they would be just fine.
All right. So are you good with that one, Rod?
Yep.
All right. Next question from Roberto. One homeschool parent recommended paying for a membership with the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, or HSLDA of Canada, and using their forms. What are the pros and cons?
So their forms are our forms. I sent those forms to them so that we could do them jointly, and so that they knew what we were recommending in Saskatchewan. Those are the forms that they've put up on their website as well. Pros and cons for HSLDA. I guess the only, for $13 a month, it's hard to find any cons. I've worked with Megan on the legal side of things. We generally will get a question a month coming out of Saskatchewan, school divisions. I don't, how do I want to say this? Sometimes they make, they assume the worst about parents. And I don't think that's really fair, but it can result in some bad decisions on their part. And parents are left with, sometimes the only recourse is to have a lawyer write a letter to a school division. It doesn't happen often. I don't want to scare anybody, but it's a fact of life. If you are in a particular situation where you are using childcare, a lot of the time, where you have grandparents who are looking after your children, where you have special needs, where you've had disagreements with the local school division in the past. These are reasons that you might want to consider legal defense. I've worked with Peter Stock also. He's the president of HSLDA. Very, very great advocacy group. They've intervened in a number of lawsuits across Canada. They're a great organization to support. And we work very closely with HSLDA.
I guess one way I would look at it, it's just like house insurance. It's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. That's just me though. All right, so next question. Let's see. Jenna Matthews. My question is, does Regina Public have a curriculum for each grade for homeschool that parents can work through with their child for all subjects, or do parents make their own curriculum?
So Regina Public, if you register as a home-based educator, Regina Public does not supply a curriculum. Michelle Rowland-Semenchuk is the homeschool administrator for Regina Public. She is a good resource for parents. She will help. I think the thing to remember with home-based education is it's parent-directed. If you're looking for teacher-directed, SunWest, FlexEd, online school is a valid parent choice to use. But if you're gonna homeschool, that means that you select the curriculum or the resources. Not everybody uses a curriculum. Many people teach out of daily life. It takes some planning, but you can do it. Also, I would say when you're just starting, there's almost too many curriculums out there, but this is where connecting with a local support group would be invaluable. You can find people who think more closely to how you think and whose families match yours a little more. And that'll be a great resource for, hey, what do you do? How do you do it? What curriculum do you use? It's, anybody else have?
Crickets.
Hey guys, it's 6:25, and I'm just gonna keep going. As long as there's questions, I will just keep going, okay?
It's 7:25, Rod.
That's what I meant.
Okay.
It's
Cool.
6:25 somewhere.
Yeah. Probably Alberta.
Can I just say something about curriculum, Rod?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
I would just encourage people not to be too quick to jump into buying curriculum. There's really no rush. I really like the advice earlier to just start with math and language arts. Start doing some math, start reading to your kids, use lots of books from the library, find out what they're interested in, find out how they learn, find out how you learn, how you best, can work with the material. And there's lots of time. It's a school mentality to think that everything has to start in September, right? We got lots of time over the year to grow into this. And I can't tell you how much money I've wasted on curriculum. So just do it slowly, and just, it will emerge. You'll find out what works for you, what kinds of things work for you. And lots of people don't use hardly any curriculum at all, right? There's so many resources out there now in your community, in your library, in your art galleries, and I know that we're limited in what we can do right now, but even just with the whole internet out there, there's a lot out there. So don't be too quick to jump into buying stuff, I'd say.
Great advice, Anne. Thank you.
Sorry, I lost where I am on the. Okay, so that was Jenna. I'm just going through all the questions in the chat here.
Is it possible to start your child in school and choose to homeschool if we find that isn't working out after a few weeks, months in? What does homeschooling for kindergarten typically look like? So 2 questions there. First of all, you can homeschool at any time during the year. The notice of intent, you should give 30 days notice. If your child is being abused or neglected, of course, you don't have to make them suffer through that 30 days, but work with your school, work with your school division, and feel free to contact me. So if that isn't working, you can remove them from school and start homeschooling. Legally, you need to give 30 days notice, but from the time that you submit your forms until your program is registered, the policy manual says that you will not be prosecuted. So that's kind of a legal-ish statement, but so that's the answer. You don't need to continue schooling. What does homeschooling look like for kindergarten? You need to register. You need to file your paperwork at least 30 days before your child turns 7. So typically you don't need to homeschool kindergarten. There may be reasons that you choose to. Some school divisions offer some funding if you register kindergarten. For some people, that's worth it. What it would look like is a lot of play and a lot of exploration, right? We used to play games, word games. We used to say, I have 10 candy bars and 5 kids. How many candy bars does each kid get? Kids can learn the concepts quickly. They're so smart. We give them so little credit.
All right. Now to go to Dawn. She's actually asked 2 questions. I'm just wondering how parents can make sure their kids get the proper schooling, so if they start back next year, they're not behind in courses. And their second question, a little bit later, was, is there anyone with the Horizon School Division that we could use as a resource? Now, I am the zone rep for Horizon School Division. I am a SHBE member, so I am not a resource for the division itself, but you can always come to me for questions if you have any. and wondering how parents make sure their kids get the proper schooling so if they start back next year.
Right. So I would say if you're planning to put your children back in school, you should definitely be looking at the Sask curriculum. So that's edonline.sk.ca. And they have all the, you know, to be fair, it's the curriculum. It's not necessarily what they would learn in the class, or what would be covered, but that is the learning objectives. And that's where you would see what they would be covering and what they will be covering the following year. So that would be how you would kind of de-risk the re-entry into the school system. Typically, you would simply register them in the grade where you intend them to go. And if the school division has any concerns about that, they would contact you and they would do a learning assessment and put them, you know, jointly with you, discuss it and put them in the grade that they feel is most appropriate. Keep in mind, it's very hard to fail anymore. So they tend to they tend to balance the self-esteem portion over the academic portion. So they will probably put your child in the grade of their age peers. That's typically what would be done.
There was just a question about, it's kind of a follow-up question to what I was saying about not jumping into buying curriculum too quickly. So Carrie was asking, how do you start without a curriculum? Is that not included in the submission process? So no, the submission process is your broad annual goals. How you achieve those goals might be through curriculum and it might not be. So for example, in the early years, one of my social studies goals might be to learn more about our community. That would be my broad annual goal. So how I go about that is I might say, we're going to meet lots of people in my community. We're going to meet a firefighter. We're going to tour the grocery store. We're going to go to a town council meeting, whatever. So the way that you achieve the goals is not necessarily part of your written education plan, and you certainly do not have to include curriculum in your written education plan. And kids learn all the time without curriculum, right? There's many, many ways to learn without curriculum.
And so do you. You're learning right now.
All right, so the next question is, will homeschooling affect their social skill and teamwork from home? Well, will homeschooling affect their social skills and teamwork? Also, do parents need to be good at every subject?
So I think homeschooling will affect their social skills and their teamwork. And that would be my concern about putting them into school. I think homeschoolers have way better social skills than the average population. And I think they work well in teams way better than the general population. I'll tell you a story. I was at a camp, just a music place, and I saw about 26 kids all playing together. Age ranged from about 6 to 22. And there were 2 kids not joining in. The 26 kids were homeschooled from a few families, and the 2 kids not joining in couldn't figure it out because there was too broad of an age range. Everywhere I go that homeschool kids are getting together, they have friends who are more than plus or minus 1 year in age from them. They can speak with adults, they can represent people. I've heard from numerous employers who say, wow, where did this kid learn his social skills? I can trust him in front of customers, and he's only 16. I hear this repeatedly. I don't know why this stigma is still attached to homeschoolers, because it is simply so untrue. And I think part of that is parents can guide their children in a positive social model, whereas we've all heard of peer pressure. Peer pressure is essentially socialization. It's uncontrolled socialization. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm a slight bit passionate about that one.
Never would have.
So
Do
I have a
parents- Yeah, go ahead.
This is Krista again. I have a few things that I wanted to say about that too. I agree with a lot of what you said there. And I just think that parents have to give themselves some credit that you have a lot to do with your child's socialization. Just their values, their beliefs, their personal identity in your homes and from your families. That's really important for your kids to get to know who they are and how they interact with the people around them, the society around them. Some things in our house that we've done, because everyone's situation is different. Some people have only one child, and if they're keeping them home this year, they are concerned about that. And I think that parents, you are going to have to do a little bit of work. You're going to have to find another family group maybe that you can get together with, find a co-op, find opportunities for your kids to interact with the people around them in all different age groups, I think. One thing we've done is we've done science specifically with other homeschooling families. So we'd get together once a week and we would do our reading separately, and then we do our experiments and projects together as a group. So we would have 8 or 10 kids here, and they would all be doing the experiments together, failing together, succeeding together, doing all their theories and everything together. And that has really helped with that. We've also done things like our church hosts a White Cross. So the seniors mostly in our church get together and they cut fabric and make bandages for an African country. And so our kids do that twice, 2 or 3 times a year whenever our church runs it. And it's really good for them. They sit and they talk and have coffee and roll bandages with most of the group is age 60 plus, and it has been very good for them. So yeah, just find other family groups and just encourage your kids to get involved in whatever you can do. That can be sports, it can be library programs, it can be whatever. And with you guiding them, like the socialization is really not an issue anymore, like people assume that it is with homeschoolers.
Great
Alrighty.
practical ideas,
Yes.
Krista. Thank you for jumping in.
Yeah. Thanks, Krista. All right, so Evie Sawatsky.
Oh, wait, there was a second part to that question. There was, do parents need to be good
Oh,
at every
yeah.
subject?
Yes. Thank you.
Well, for one thing, I would say no. You need to be good at directing, I guess, finding resources. This, at no other time in history have you had better access to more expert advice. It's almost too much because it's hard to sift through. You don't need to be an expert at every subject. Between you and friends and another parent who's involved, you can teach math, language arts, anything. There's co-ops, there's a lot of resources out there. Don't want to minimize it, but here's another angle to think about. I never enjoyed history like I do now that I've been learning it alongside my children. I can't imagine not knowing some of the history that I know now, and we have great discussions.
Alrighty. If we're done with that one, let's go to Evie's question. Evie's in Regina. She's getting ready to send in her completed applications. The last question on the RPS education plan document asks that if you would like to receive payment for the home-based education grant. Is this a flat fee or a receipt-based grant? Also, what is included? Would additional lessons like music and physical education, like swimming, dance, gymnastics lessons, fit within that?
Yeah, so great question. In Regina, that is called a grant. And so out of the money that the province provides to Regina Public Education, they provide some of that to parents. It does not require a receipt. If you want the money prior to, I think, January, you need to provide receipts. It changes from year to year, and I haven't looked at it this year yet, but it would definitely, as a grant, you can spend it on what you prioritize. That could include music lessons, physical education, swimming, dance, gymnastics lessons. Yeah, it doesn't, when we lived in the Prairie South School Division, they wanted it to fit within the core subjects. So it does depend on that may not still be the case. Don't take that as being the case today. The real answer is every school division is different, and it should be posted in their administrative procedures and on their homeschool page of their website. If you have trouble finding it, I'd be happy to help you with that. Send an email to help@shbe.info. We can work through it.
All righty. So Roberto asks a question. Regina Catholic School Division has forms, give me a sec, has forms asking for 3 goals for Regina, or for Catholic religious studies. I have the HSLDA forms. I cannot find curriculum for Catholic religious studies. What should I do about religion goals?
Right, so the separate school divisions do not have to, they're not obligated to take non-minority faith students. So as a separate school division, they can ask for 3 goals for Catholic religious studies. What I would suggest would be using the HSLDA forms as is and submitting that as is without the religious goals, religious studies goals. If they request you further, they can contact you and you can provide those goals separately. I think with the notwithstanding clause bill being passed in Saskatchewan, they are totally entitled to accept your registration, even if you are a non-minority faith family. And I think otherwise you would be able to probably come up with some agreement with Regina Catholic School Division. Roberto, if you want to follow up with that, you can reach me at help@shbe.info. I'd be happy to follow up more with that.
All righty. Sorry, I'm just going through the questions here in the chat. Does anyone else have any questions? Because I've kind of
I want to clarify my earlier statement. I said to track the provincial curriculum. I didn't mean to follow it. You can achieve all of those learning goals. You can go back into your correct grade at a school using any or all methods of teaching. I didn't mean to say you need to follow a curriculum. I'm sorry if you heard that. I think there's some mention in the chat that maybe that is what people heard, or the way that I presented it. So I apologize for that. That's my miscommunication. But the Sask curriculum is a great resource nonetheless. You can see what they would be learning, or what the intended learning would be if they were in school.
All right, so I've come to the end of the questions, Rod.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining. I hope this was helpful. And we'll record this. I'll clean it up and stop the program stop the recording right about now.